David and Sarah. The epitome of marital bliss. 10 years, 2 beautiful children, a love story straight from a fairy tale. At least that's what the world saw. Their life, a tapestry woven with laughter, shared dreams, and unwavering support. He, a successful architect. She, a renowned novelist. Their life, a symphony, or so it seemed. A stray perfume lingering in the air. A misplaced phone, screen glowing with a hidden name. Seeds of suspicion, sown subtly, began to sprout in David's heart. He dismissed them at first. Trivial, insignificant, yet they persisted, gnawing at the edges of his composure. The late-night phone calls, hushed and hurried. The sudden business trips, explanations vague and rushed. David couldn't shake the feeling. Something was amiss. The more David tried to ignore the signs, the more they screamed at him. His gut, a compass pointing towards an ugly truth he didn't want to face. He loved Sarah, trusted her implicitly, but the doubts, like insidious weeds, choked his peace. One evening, while Sarah was showering, her phone buzzed. A message flashed on the screen, the sender's name, partially obscured, yet terrifyingly familiar. Inam Mark, his best friend. The thought hit him like a physical blow. David's blood ran cold. He had to know. Fueled by a maelstrom of emotions, David decided to confront his demons. The weight of suspicion had been gnawing at him for weeks, each passing day adding to his torment. He could no longer ignore the signs, the subtle changes in Sarah's behavior, the late-night phone calls, and the unexplained absences. His mind was a battlefield, torn between trust and doubt, love and betrayal. The decision to follow her was not made lightly. It was a desperate attempt to find the truth and put his restless mind at ease. He would follow Sarah, uncover the truth that hid behind her fabricated smiles. Each smile she gave him felt like a dagger, a reminder of the possible deceit lurking beneath. He remembered the days when her smiles were genuine, filled with warmth and love. Now they seemed rehearsed, a mask to hide her true feelings. David's heart ached at the thought, but he knew he had to press on. The truth, no matter how painful, was better than living in a web of lies. The next day, Sarah announced a solo shopping trip. Her voice was casual, but David sensed an underlying tension. He watched her closely, noting the way she avoided his gaze, the slight tremor in her hands as she picked up her bags. It was as if she knew he was onto her, yet she continued with the charade. David's resolve hardened. This was his chance to uncover the truth. David, pretending to be engrossed in work, waited for her to leave. His mind raced with possibilities, each one more distressing than the last. He glanced at the clock, counting down the minutes until she would walk out the door. When she finally did, he felt a mix of relief and dread. This was it, the moment of truth. He followed her car, heart pounding, every instinct screaming at him to turn back. The drive felt like an eternity, each turn heightening his anxiety. He kept a safe distance, not wanting to alert her to his presence. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, each one more troubling than the last. What if he was wrong? What if there was a perfectly innocent explanation for her behavior? But deep down, he knew he had to see this through. His pursuit ended at a secluded restaurant, where he saw Sarah laughing, hand intertwined with Mark. The sight was like a punch to the gut. His world crumbled. He watched from a distance, his heart shattering with each passing moment. The laughter, the intimate gestures, it was all too much to bear. This was the confirmation he dreaded, the undeniable proof of her betrayal. The sight was like a punch to the gut. His world crumbled. The reality of the situation hit him like a tidal wave, overwhelming and inescapable. He felt a deep, searing pain in his chest, as if his heart was being ripped apart. The woman he loved, the one he trusted with his life, had deceived him in the worst possible way. Betrayal, sharp and cold, pierced through him. He stood there, frozen, unable to move or think. The world around him seemed to blur, the sounds of the restaurant fading into the background. All he could focus on was the pain, the overwhelming sense of loss and betrayal. He knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The trust he once had was shattered, and with it, his heart. Rage, a tempestuous storm, raged within David. It was a feeling he couldn't shake, a fire that burned hotter with each passing second. The betrayal he felt was like a knife twisting in his gut. Each thought of Sarah and Mark together, adding fuel to the inferno inside him. He wanted to confront them, unleash the fury that consumed him. The image of their betrayal was seared into his mind, and he knew he couldn't rest until he had faced them, demanded answers, and let them feel a fraction of the pain they had caused him. He stormed into the restaurant, the image of their intertwined hands fueling his anger. The sight of them together, so casual and intimate, was like a slap to his face. He could feel his heart pounding in his chest, each beat echoing the rage that coursed through his veins.
Sarah! Mark! How could you? His voice was a thunderclap cutting through the din of the restaurant. He could see the shock on their faces, but it did nothing to quell the storm inside him.
His voice, thick with betrayal, echoed in the stunned silence. The other patrons of the restaurant turned to watch, their conversations halted by the drama unfolding before them. David didn't care. All that mattered was the confrontation, the need to make them understand the depth of his pain. Sarah's face, a mask of shock, quickly morphed into a carefully crafted facade of remorse. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her eyes, once so full of life, now reflected the gravity of the situation. Mark, pale and stammering, avoided David's gaze. He looked like a deer caught in headlights, his usual confidence shattered by the intensity of David's anger. He fumbled for words, but they seemed to die in his throat.
David, please, it's not what you think. Sarah's voice was desperate, pleading. She reached out a hand, but David recoiled, the touch too much to bear.
David, I can explain. Mark's voice was shaky, his usual bravado gone. He looked at Sarah, then back at David, his eyes wide with fear and regret.
The scene, a confirmation of his worst fears. David felt a cold chill run down his spine. The reality of the situation hit him like a tidal wave, leaving him breathless and disoriented. He had always feared this moment, but now that it was here, it was even more devastating than he had imagined. But here's the twist. David's anger, his pain, it was all a performance. A meticulously crafted act in a play he had written, directed, and was now starring in. You see, David had known about the affair for months. He had intercepted their messages, planned his discovery, even orchestrated this very confrontation. He'd chosen to expose them, not in the heat of the moment, but in a cold, calculated act of revenge. He would make them hurt, make them feel the depths of his pain. David had meticulously constructed a web of deceit around Sarah and Mark. He'd planted seeds of doubt in their minds, manipulated their actions, all the while playing the part of the oblivious husband. He'd watched, detached as guilt gnawed at Sarah, as Mark squirmed under the weight of his betrayal. Their affair, a tool in David's arsenal of revenge. He was the architect of their downfall, and he would savor every brick as it fell. In the aftermath, as Sarah sobbed, pleading for forgiveness, David felt nothing but a chilling emptiness. He had exposed their betrayal, but at what cost? His marriage, a charred ruin beyond repair. The truth, a double-edged sword, had cut them all. He had his revenge, but it tasted like ash in his mouth. Was this hollow victory worth the price? David's tale is a stark reminder that appearances can be deceptive. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. He had a loving family, a close-knit group of friends, and a seemingly unbreakable bond with his partner. But beneath this facade, cracks were beginning to form. Trust, once the bedrock of his relationships, was eroding away, replaced by suspicion and doubt. It compels us to ask, how well do we really know those closest to us? The laughter shared over dinner, the intimate conversations, the moments of joy and sorrow, are they all genuine, or are they mere illusions crafted to hide deeper truths? David's story forces us to confront these uncomfortable questions. Can trust, once shattered, ever be truly restored? When the mirror of trust is broken, can the pieces ever be put back together to reflect the same image? Or will the cracks always be visible, a constant reminder of the betrayal? Or does the act of seeking revenge only poison the well of love, leaving behind an acrid emptiness? Revenge might offer a momentary sense of justice, but it often leaves a lasting bitterness that corrodes the soul. The answers, much like the human heart, remain complex and shrouded in shades of gray. Love and trust are not black and white. They exist in a spectrum of emotions and experiences that are often difficult to navigate. And in the silence of his empty house, David is left to grapple with the weight of his actions, reflecting on the choices he made and the paths he took. Each photograph he looks at, each memory he revisits, is a reminder of what was lost and what could have been, forever haunted by the question, was it all worth it? As he walks down deserted streets and sits alone in the quiet of the night, the echoes of his past decisions reverberate in his mind, leaving him to ponder the true cost of broken trust and the possibility of redemption.